Chapter 4. The Middleton Rules. What? A rustle came from Marv's bed as he turned toward me. My eyes had adjusted to the dark thanks to the moonlight that spilled through the window. Are you absolutely out of your mind? Could you speak a little louder? I don't think Trot heard you down the hall. Right, sorry, but no way. What's wrong with you, man? Nothing. I don't think I've ever thought more clearly in my life. I want to see the mansion before I die. It's just something I got to do. Do you want to get us both in trouble? Do you want us both to get nailed with LYN and publicly hanged in the cul-de-sac tomorrow? A gruesome hanging I saw a couple years ago flooded my head, and I cringed. Two bodies dressed in the customary black death robes swung below the rusty rim of what had been called a basket hoop in the old world. Their vacant eyes, which still sometimes haunted my sleep, stared at me. Nothing but a frayed rope connecting their necks to the rim. I didn't know what the poor boys had done to be convicted of LYN, but they'd been from faction houses toward the top of the street. Then another disturbing memory of a hanging, the oldest and worst of them all, flashed through my mind. A large, plump body with wispy, scraggly hair on its head drifted from side to side as it hung from a basketball rim. I tried as hard as I could to shove the image out. You won't be convicted, I said. You're not 16 yet. Yeah, but I'll have life in jail, Marv practically spat. True, the usual punishment for an infraction according to the Middleton rules. That's just as bad if you ask me. Forget about helping the faction get prestige points. I have a reputation of a criminal, and then I'd never get my name on our flag. All good points. I kept quiet. And you will be convicted of LYN if we get caught, Gore. His eyes shone white in the dark as he stared at me, unblinking. And I'd go as far as to say, especially if our own faction catches you, even though you win a ton of prestige points for us, we'd get even more if we got you convicted of LYN. That was also true, as disgusting as it was. If a faction discovered one of its own members had LYN and reported it to the courts, that faction would earn at least double the prestige points I'd earned each year. In fact, rumor had it, factions sometimes even framed their soon-to-be deceased members just to snag the jackpot. I prayed to power my faction wouldn't do that to me before I finally saw the mansion. You know what? He said. You just proved it. You do have LYN. What? No, I don't. Yeah, you do. No. I've wanted to go to the mansion for years now. That's definitely not LYN. Whatever, man. A rustle from his bed as he turned on his back. But this is serious stuff. I mean, those VOs under your mattress are one thing, but if you get caught going to the mansion, you're as good as horse chow. He packed a lot of bite with that last declaration. I took a deep breath. I was losing my chance to convince him fast. I had to get things going in my direction, like now. Look, all I need you to do is show me through the woods, point me in the general direction of the mansion. I glanced out the window at the looming black forest where Marv hunted every day. Supposedly, the manor's huge property was somewhere on the opposite side of those woods. If the rumors were right, I doubted that the Battlelux family could cover the whole perimeter with guards. There, Marv pointed, his arm a skinny, dark shape, toward the corner of the room by the window. That's the general direction of the mansion. Good luck, man. Part of me wanted to laugh. Real helpful, Marv. Oh, okay, I guess I could go ahead and start heading in that You gotta cross a brook, though. A brook, got it. There's this stone path you gotta use to go across it, and when you do that, there's this boulder you need to turn off at. Gah. He threw his hands into the air. Forget this whole mission, man. It's not like it's that complicated, but it'd be too hard at night for someone who's not familiar with the area. Exactly, that's what I figured. That's why I need your help, Marv. Is the boulder the last obstacle? Pretty much, it's straightforward after that. Perfect. Just show me to the boulder and that's it. You can come back as soon as you do that. No way, man, I'm not that dumb. He folded his arms across his chest. Come on, I need you. I can't go through the streets. The night patrol will see me. Like I said, you don't even have to bring me that far. We can do it right now, get it over with tonight. Aw, man. Getting closer. I swear I won't ask you another favor for the rest of my life. And I racked my brain hard. I'll recommend to Jev you take Nez's spot as supply hunter. I don't know if he'll do it, but you know I have a lot of respect in the faction. A long silence. Please, Marv. Then an even longer, withering sigh. Fine, he grumbled. I can't believe I'm actually going to do this. I fought the urge to jump from my bed. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, don't get excited, man. And when you get back from the mansion, don't tell me anything about it. I don't even want to know, though I'm sure it's pretty precious. But before we go, just tell me one thing. A rustle as he turned toward me, those unblinking white eyes trained on me again. Why do you want to go there so bad? What's this ridiculous obsession really all about? Dead silence. Like my conception day. I'd never told anybody about this, either, but Marv deserved to know if he was going to take the risk of bringing me to the manor. I took a deep breath. Well, to start, I guess you could say I was always naturally curious. Gee, you think? I pushed on. When it was time to play games back in my nurture faction, sometimes I'd just study the actual games themselves, like the cards or the checkers set, instead of playing them. Same with other kinds of objects, like pens and even the furniture in my room. I'd pull the drawers out of my wardrobe and look inside it. Then I'd put the drawers back in slowly so I could see how they fit. You're so weird, man. I chuckled. I guess. The Razors didn't seem to think much of it at first, but then they definitely started to get suspicious. They just kind of watched me study things with this weird look on their faces. That's when Chud gave me a, well, special talk, I guess you could say, when I was around 7 years old or so. A pang struck my heart at the thought of good old fun-loving, understanding Chud. A razor? Marv's voice was thick with worry, though tinged with satisfaction. You mean you got busted? Actually, no. Chud was the housekeeper. He snorted. Oh, what a dumb job. Yeah, like his was any better. Anyway, like you just implied, even in the nurture faction, nobody gave him any respect. Chud was the most priceless guy in the faction, though, at least in my opinion. He was always in a good mood, jolly, you could even say, and he was really funny, like you. Heh, I knew Marv would appreciate that. Yeah, he was cracking jokes all the time. He was pretty overweight, though, so the little kids, and even the Razors, made fun of him for that. I guess we always had more than enough food, so he got to eat extra. Anyway, for some reason he liked me. He'd hang out and play cards with me. He's the one who taught me how to play Crazy Eights, actually. Oh, cool. I taught Marv how to play that game. He'd always sneak me extra food, too. More than other kids, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, one afternoon between lessons, he took me to the nursery where no one could overhear us but the babies in the cribs, and we had the most intimate talk we'd ever had. He told me I had to be careful, that the Razors were getting suspicious. He said I shouldn't be studying the VOs in the house, that it's not a good thing to do. The guy must be a genius, Marv said with a tone as dry as our faction sinks. But then he leaned in real close and said something like, but between you and me, it's totally fine to examine VOs. You just need to make sure no one sees you do it. Marv's eyes grew wide. So he was crazy. Whatever, Marv. He even said he bet the VOs in the mansion were real interesting to study, since they were the most priceless ones in Middleton. I've got to admit, ever since he mentioned that, it was all I could think about. I always tried to imagine what the manor's VOs looked like, including the mansion itself, which had to be 1,000 times more precious looking than my nurture faction house, and obviously our faction house. Well, I've always known you've thought about that. Then you must be the genius, Marv. But I listened to his advice and made sure nobody saw me when I studied the nurture faction's VOs, and the Razors started not to be suspicious anymore. I guess they just figured it was a phase I went through. Man, you were insanely lucky, Marv said. But then, a couple years later, the worst thing ever happened, or at least one of the worst. I swallowed. What? His tense voice showed his concern. They hanged Chud. His voice dropped real low. I'm sorry, man. The horrific memory flooded back again, and this time I couldn't stop it. They hanged him in the cul-de-sac, and it wasn't the actual death that was the worst part. I wiped my clammy forehead with the back of my hand. You see, in his room they'd found all these papers he'd drawn on. He'd scribbled tons of pictures of objects in the faction, including diagrams that showed how they worked. The diagrams even had measurements and stuff on them, so it obviously wasn't art or anything. He must have taken the papers and a pen from the entertainment room to do all this stuff. He was a thinker, Chud was. Again, weird, Marv said, but his voice was still low. He obviously felt bad for the poor kid. So, what was the worst part, man? Though I'm not sure I want to know. I took another deep, quivering breath. Well, when the patrol arrived, they made Chud put on a death robe while they built a fire by the basketball hoop, and just before they hanged him, they burned his papers in front of him and everybody in the faction. even the youngest kids. My breaths came out hard and fast now. You think the fact they were about to kill Chud would be the thing most on his mind, but it wasn't. I closed my eyes. I'll never forget how he screamed and begged like an absolute madman for them not to destroy what he called his life's work. His incredibly high-pitched screams echoed in my mind, as well as his vigorous attempts to break free from his handcuffed hands and the 2 strong patrol officers who held him steady next to the basketball hoop. My stomach shrunk in on itself. "Sounds awful, man," Marv murmured. "Tell me about it." But anyway, right before they hanged Chud, the patrol told him in front of everyone the same things you've always said, that he shouldn't have been studying the VOs, that was the Badalux's family's job. But here's the thing. Chud was one of the nicest people I ever knew, much nicer than the Razors or any other kids in my nurture faction. So I figured if he liked to study objects like I did, then there was no way it could possibly be a bad thing. In fact, it had to be a good thing. I've never wanted to diagram or draw VOs on paper like him, but I admit the more interesting the VOs I found out in the middle of town were, the more they made me want to see the mansion and what it had too. Maybe even for Chud in a way. I don't know. A long silence. "Well," Marv said, "I don't agree with you or Chud, but I've got to admit that's a nasty way for a man to go out, and it sounds like he was a good guy. So believe me when I said I'm real sorry about that man." He sounded genuine enough. "Thanks. It felt good to get that out. You ready to go to the mansion?" He snorted. "And get caught and hang like Chud? No thanks." Crap. I should have left out that part of the story. I exhaled the most agonizing sigh I possibly could. "I told you, that's not gonna happen. It's just 5 minutes in the woods, and it's only for tonight. And don't forget about my promise of trying to make you a supply hunter." A long silence. "Oh, fine," he grumbled. He turned and stared out the window, his back to me. He told me a long time ago he always kept the drapes open because he liked to look at the moon before he fell asleep. No doubt there was something peaceful about it. "Just promise me one thing before we go." "What's that?" "Promise you won't try to break into the mansion." I laughed. "Come on, Marv. Even I'm not that crazy. Now here's the deal. I'm gonna head outside to the outhouse, wait 5 minutes, then come after me and we'll go from there." "All right, man," he said in a weary voice. I rummaged inside my mattress, pulled out the gold necklace, and put it into my pocket. No way I was going on this kind of mission without it. In a way, the precious VO had inspired the operation in the first place. I also put my flashlight in my pocket in case I needed it. Good thing all us supply hunters had one. We were only supposed to use it in town, and even then only in dark areas. But at this point, I couldn't care less about the stupid Middleton rules. Didn't matter to me anymore if the town conserved batteries, though I've got to admit I felt a bit guilty about that. What would Middleton do when it ran out of batteries, along with other useful types of VOs? Nothing good, that was for sure. "What are you doing, man?" Marv still faced the window, so he must have heard my shuffling. "Nothing. See you soon." As I went toward the bedroom door, a smile snuck onto my face, even though I felt bad about lying to Marv. I had every intention of breaking into the mansion.